Hey guys, it's me, Rich. The Supreme Court just dropped a ruling that should terrify every Democrat who's ever relied on a safe seat. Your political map, the one your party has spent decades carefully engineering, may be about to get completely redrawn. The Louisiana v. Callais ruling isn't just another legal footnote. It's a constitutional wrecking ball aimed directly at race-based gerrymandering, and the aftershocks are already hitting Mississippi and North Dakota. But if you stick with me till the end of this video, you'll see that this could flip dozens of House seats, reshape Congress, and rewrite American politics for a generation. Let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back to RPW Media, where we cut through the noise and give you the real story that the mainstream media hopes you never find. All right, so let's stop pretending this is some minor legal story buried deep in the federal court system that only constitutional lawyers care about. It's not. What's happening right now could reshape American politics for decades, and Democrats are beginning to understand just how serious this situation is. The shockwaves from the Supreme Court's Louisiana v. Callais ruling are spreading fast across the country. What many first viewed as a single court decision is now turning into a nationwide legal and political transformation. Democrats are discovering that Callais was not simply another ruling added to a stack of Supreme Court opinions. It directly targeted a redistricting system that the Democratic Party has depended on for generations, since 1986. Here's the part that should make you sit up straight. That redistricting system they've been getting away with, breaking the law since 1986, is nearly 4 decades old. Now think about that. And now the bill has come due. The question isn't whether this ruling matters. The question is how deep the damage goes and whether Democrats even have a plan to stop it. The Supreme Court recently threw out 2 additional lower court rulings and remanded them for reconsideration with a very direct message. The message was Callais now controls the legal standard nationwide. No special carve-outs exist. No loopholes remain available. The old rules no longer apply because they were racist. For those of you who claim to be Democrats, the court basically said, from now on, everyone has to follow the new Callais ruling. That means judges cannot use the old rules anymore, and there are no special exceptions or easy ways around it. Oh, this is just too delicious. That reality has Democrats, activist organizations, and supporters of race-focused district mapping extremely nervous. And why wouldn't they be? They should be. Because the 2 newest cases didn't come from obscure courtrooms. No, they came from Mississippi and North Dakota. And they centered on the familiar legal argument known as voter dilution. Now, if you've watched election fights over the years, you already know exactly what that phrase usually means. And if you think the Mississippi case was bad for Democrats, wait until you hear what happened in North Dakota. In Mississippi, a federal court sided with plaintiffs supported by the NAACP. But they argued that certain legislative districts weakened black voting influence. So the court instructed the state to redraw district lines in ways intended to create districts where minority voters would supposedly have a better opportunity to elect preferred candidates, if you know what I'm saying. Politically speaking, everyone understands where this leads. For decades, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act was used to justify heavily and unconstitutionally engineered voting districts that always worked to advantage of the Democrats. Courts regularly ruled that minority communities required specially designed districts in order to guarantee what was described as fair political representation. Are you kidding me? This happened even though there was nothing unfair about the districts that they lived in. There was no racism. There was no blocking black Americans from voting for whoever they wanted to represent them. Critics argued the process turned into racial map-making disguised as civil rights law. Supporters claimed the system protected minority voting power. Now think of this like a cousin to the disparate impact that they always go by, which simply means that even if there is no racism and no intention of racism found anywhere, the fact that black people were affected by whatever the complaint in the system means to them, that system was racist. Americans can smell a scam from a mile away. Think of it like a basketball team arguing that they can't compete because there aren't enough black players on the roster. So instead of improving the team or coaching better, they go to court and ask for permission to build a team where black players are excluded. in order to guarantee better results. It sounds absurd when you actually frame it that way. And that's because it is absurd. But then the Callais ruling arrived. Suddenly, the legal foundation underneath the entire structure began to shift. I mean, think about it. Americans started understanding that race-based gerrymandering is racist and therefore unconstitutional. Not allowed to be racist when you do redistricting. On May 18th, the Supreme Court vacated the Mississippi ruling and ordered the case reconsidered using the new constitutional standards established under Callais. That decision immediately sent panic through election law circles because it signaled that many race-driven districting practices previously accepted by courts may now violate the Constitution. They actually did all along, but that's another story. Again, for those of you who describe yourselves as Democrats, on May 18th, the Supreme Court told the Mississippi court, your ruling is wrong under the new Callais rules. Look at it again. That scared election lawyers because it means race-based voting maps the courts used to allow now break the Constitution's rules. Again, they always did. They were just allowed in the past. Then North Dakota entered the picture. In that case, Native American plaintiffs argued their voting strength had been weakened because surrounding districts contained too many white voters. Earlier, the Eighth Circuit ruled that only the federal government had authority to bring lawsuits under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The Supreme Court stepped in once again, vacated that ruling, and ordered reconsideration under Callais. Now, 2 lower court rulings disappeared within days. How awesome is that? That is not routine paperwork. That's the Supreme Court systematically warning the entire redistricting establishment that the rules have fundamentally changed. Now, how many lower court Democrat-appointed judges do you think will continue to rule as if the Callais ruling doesn't even exist? All the way up to the midterms. I mean, think about that, because some of them will try. We know that. And when they do, the Supreme Court is going to keep knocking those rulings down like dominoes. And then they'll claim, oh, well, there's just not enough time for us to redistrict, even though they were screwing around in the courts all that time and could have done it. And one detail stands out above everything else. Both rulings were decided by an 8-1 vote. Once again, when it comes to smack you in the face common sense, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson stood alone in dissent. She argued that the court should have directly resolved the confusion rather than returning the cases to lower courts. What mattered even more was who did not join her. Neither of the court's other liberal ladies of the view backed Justice Jackson's position. That speaks volumes, guys. So even they appear to recognize that the legal landscape has shifted dramatically. Meanwhile, much of the media continues trying to dismiss these rulings as simple procedural actions. They don't matter. Political insiders know better. They understand exactly what the court is doing. The Supreme Court is slowly dismantling decades of Democrat racist, race-based redistricting doctrine, one ruling at a time. And it's doing it with a near unanimous vote every single time. Think about it. Here's the bigger picture. This no longer affects only congressional districts. The Callais ruling established a broader constitutional principle stating that race cannot serve as the dominant factor when drawing electoral maps. That's what the Voting Rights Act was about, right? Not rigging elections by rigging state districts. So in the heyday of the Klan, the Democrats created voting districts with mostly white people to knock out black Republican voters in the South. And now, modern-day Democrats are gerrymandering districts to wipe out all Republicans in the districts across the country. The names on the jersey changed, the play did not. Now, that principle touches nearly every level of government. State legislatures, county commissions, school boards, city councils, local election districts across the nation. Hundreds of districts originally designed under older voting rights standards may now face serious constitutional scrutiny. And they should, because as far as many are concerned, the Democrats stole many congressional seats by breaking up legitimate districts to get a black member of Congress through redistricting by race. Now, that's the truth. Now, Democratic strategists are increasingly admit Republicans could gain major advantages if courts force states to redraw race-conscious districts using the new legal standard. And honestly, their fears are understandable. I can't wait to see what the raging Cajun James Carville comes out with next when he hears this. For years, Democrats built major portions of their political machine around carefully constructed districts. Those safe seats became the backbone of fundraising operations, candidate pipelines, activist organizations, and long-term political influence. But they were also used in the never-ending racist accusations game against Republicans. Democrats love to point to the past in how Black Americans were harmed in the election process, and they were. They definitely were. But they never revealed that it was their own party that did the awful things to Black voters. That political structure is beginning to weaken. Now, some analysts reviewing census and districting records estimate that many House districts were originally designed by race, playing a major role. A large number of those seats are currently controlled by Democrats. If those maps are challenged and eventually redrawn under a strict colorblind constitutional framework, the political landscape of the United States could look dramatically different over the next decade. Then comes the event that would change everything: the 2030 census. That is when every congressional district in America eventually gets redrawn once again. This time, lawmakers and courts will operate under a Supreme Court precedent that sharply limits the use of race in district design. That changes the entire conversation, guys. States attempting to preserve older race-focused district systems could face endless legal battles. Supporters of the Callais ruling argued the decision restores equal treatment under the Constitution and finally ends decades of Democrat, racist, race-based political favoritism. I know it's hard to hear if you're a Democrat, but it is the truth. Critics argue it could weaken minority representation and undo protections created during the Civil Rights era. We should expect Democrats to start shouting that the Supreme Court is racist, that the Republican Party is racist, and that anyone who doesn't allow them to construct racist, race-based districts is also racist. We've seen that playbook before. And now we have people like Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader of the House, claiming that he wants to wipe out the Supreme Court's conservative base by adding extra justices that would be radical progressives, probably more radical than Justice Jackson. All right? But regardless of political opinion, one reality is becoming impossible to ignore. Callais is not just another Supreme Court ruling quietly sitting inside legal archives. It is becoming a political earthquake capable of reshaping American elections for an entire generation. And both political parties understand the largest aftershocks may still be coming. Now, here's the upside the media will never lead with. For the first time in decades, the legal framework of this country is trending toward actual colorblind equality. Not equality of outcome engineered by bureaucrats with maps and racial formulas, but genuine equal treatment under the law. Now, isn't that what everybody fought for during the Civil Rights Movement? Isn't that what the Constitution promised? That's what Callais is beginning to deliver. All right. So tell me what you think in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, follow, and comment if you want to be kept up to date with how the Callais ruling reshapes America's political map. I'll see you in the next one.